Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I hope everyone in your family is safe and well. I'm very excited to have Katie Mehnert and Christi Woodworth on our show today. This is going to be a great show. We are going to be in webinar format so that we can tape the program, and videos for our show are always available on our purspower.com Let's Share the Journey tab on our website. And people have told us over and over again what high quality content we have. So I hope you go visit it. I post the guests for the following Friday every Monday, and you can register from our homepage. Please do start introducing yourselves on chat. This is going to be a terrific group, and we've got some folks in the energy industry that don't normally attend our calls on the call today. So this will be fun. Introduce yourselves. And if you have any sentiments you want to share as we go through the process, there's the little clapping hands and emoji button on the bottom, and please go ahead and use that. Let me start by telling you what PursPower is. PursPower is working to help women use their massive purchasing power to drive positive change. We believe that if women, who make 80% of all purchasing decisions, would choose to buy from the companies that actively promote women, and we would do that in mass, and we could create a funding stream for battered women's shelters in the process, that we could shatter glass ceilings and change lives. So that's what we're trying to do. At the start of the coronavirus, we brought together leaders, national leaders, like you're going to hear on the call today, along with our PursPower community to share information and share support in this difficult time. I want to shout out to our special guests. We've got Luke Kerr, Jean Kelly, Lynn Harden, and Jennifer Grigsby on the line, and I believe they're the ones that are here, and they're our shareholders. And I want to put out a huge thank you to OG&E for sponsoring this program. They are a wonderful community partner and an employer of choice for women. I've worked with them for years, and we are so lucky to have them as our sponsor today. We hope you leave this session feeling empowered and excited about the massive transformation ahead. The changes you're going to hear about today will impact all of us. So thank you again, both Katie and Christi, for being here today. Appreciate it. All right. What I'm going to do is I'll introduce our speakers, and then again, please share your comments via chat as we go, and ask questions by clicking on the Q&A link, and we'll get to the questions about halfway through the program. So let me introduce Christi. She is the Vice President of Corporate Communications, Brand and Marketing for OGE Energy Corporation, and she's been there all of 10 days. So thank you so much for coming on our show so quickly after joining OGE. Prior to joining OGE, Christi was a Vice President of Public Relations with Sonic Drive-In, where she worked for 16 years. There, Christi was responsible for public relations, supportive marketing, social media strategy, franchise development, social impact, cause branding, etc. She was also the chair of Sonic's crisis management team. And I was thinking about that earlier, and you were there during the start of the pandemic. Holy smokes, that had to be a critical role in Sonic's operation during this time. Christi was named as Advertising Working Mother of the Year by Working Mother Magazine and the Advertising Women of New York in 2014. And she serves on the Board of Angels Foster Network and Junior League. She's also been involved with the Oklahoma Teen Pregnancy Prevention Steering Committee and is a member of the Public Relations Society of America and the Association of Women in Communications. So that is Christi. Anything else you want to add?
I don't have anything to add. I think that was plenty. But I am excited to be here today. As Donna mentioned, I'm on day 10. This is the 10th day of my new career in the energy sector. So there's more that I don't know than I do know. But I'm really excited to be at OG&E. It's a great company. I have a great team, and I have a lot to learn. Okay. Katie is a modern architect of culture change in energy. Her focus is the intersection of equity, sustainability, environment, and economy, and we'll dig into that a little bit more. She's the founder of Ally, a diverse digital community and careers platform that's building the energy workforce of the future across oil and gas, utilities, and renewables. Ally is the only global energy community focused on women and minorities with jobs, offering resources through its council, research through its Energy Diversity and Inclusion Index, the Energy Workforce of the Future Initiative, Faces of Energy Sustainability Series, Voices of Energy Podcast, Energy 2.0 Annual Summit, Grit Awards, and Best Energy Workplaces. Katie believes in bridges, inclusions, and solutions. As an author and speaker, she is frequently sought after by media, governments, and organizations globally. She's been featured in Forbes, Scientific American, CNN, Newsweek, CNBC, and South by Southwest. And in 2019, she testified before Congress on the clean energy workforce of the future. And in 2020, was appointed as an ambassador to the U.S. Department of Energy on the Equity in Energy Initiative. Her book, Grow with the Flow, Embracing Difference, Overcoming Failure and Progress with Purpose, was published in May of 2020. Katie appeared in Hot Money, a 2021 documentary produced by Academy Award-winning actor Jeff Bridges and retired NATO General Wesley Clark and Army veteran Wes Clark Jr. on the financial complexities of climate change, energy, insurance, and real estate. So welcome, Katie.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
Great.
It's raining outside here, and I'm hoping we don't lose the power.
Well, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
It's not raining here. It's a beautiful sunny day in central Oklahoma. So let's get into it because we want to make sure we have a lot of time for Q&A with the folks on the call. Katie, we'll start with the easy one. You're a huge supporter of women and are really making a difference for women in energy. Help us get to know you better by providing us with an overview of your background and key crossroads that have led you to this place today in your life and career.
Well, thanks for having me. It's interesting that question kicked us off because last night I was having a nice meal with a friend I hadn't seen in a while here in Texas. We're slowly taking our masks off, and we had this exact conversation. Her husband is getting ready to leave the workforce at a big company, and he's going through these nerves. And I said, I've been there. So a couple of years back, about 7 or 8 years ago, I was working at BP. Most of my career is in energy. I worked at Enron and helped to deregulate Texas. And then got into big oil. So went to Shell and spent about 7 years flying all over the world, helping Shell to get its health, safety, and sustainability organization shaped up so that it could serve the businesses. So I got to see some really interesting things in safety. And one of the things that was a defining moment was I noticed that diverse teams, and I don't just mean women and men, but diverse teams drove better safety and environmental results and drove better financial results. So I took that with me. A number of years later, I got a call after the Macondo incident in the Gulf of Mexico at BP to go work with BP and the executive team on helping to shift culture. And it was when I was at BP, I was sitting on a plane between London and Houston. I sat next to a man and he said, "What's a pretty young lady like you doing in a dark, dangerous business like oil and gas?" So that is what germinated the idea on some cocktail napkins after a lot of wine on a 6-hour flight back home. And not too far after, about a year later, I saw an opportunity to leave BP and kind of jump into the unknown. So started then Pink Petro, now Ally Energy, in 2014 after the insane crash of oil price. And it has been an amazing journey ever since.
That's fantastic. Well, I can't wait to hear more from you today. I know you're passionate about the intersection of equality, sustainability, the environment, and the economy. Help us understand this intersection or these intersections and the role that you think women can and should play in creating a sustainable future.
I love this question because if I think back to that moment with that gentleman, we'll call him Bubba because I don't remember his name, but he changed the face of in the course of my life. It kind of goes something like this. We're at a crossroads. Our energy is the currency of life. That's a line from Jeff Bridges, a good guy. It's what drives everything. Those that are in the energy business know this, and actually those who are not in the energy business need to realize that because we don't go without energy. But the world is using a lot of it, yet there are parts of the world that don't have enough. So we've got to do something about making that energy system balanced right? Fair, so accessible. But we also have to do that with our planet in mind. I don't know about you guys, but I think Mother Earth is pretty pissed off. We've seen a lot, the last several years. And so when we look at energy and equality, sustainability, the intersection of this is super important, because the more diversity of thought we have at this table, equity, the equality piece, the better our new energy system is going to look like. Now, this isn't going to happen overnight for all the oil and gas folks. We know this, okay? It's a 30 to 50-year journey, depending on who you talk to, but we've got to reimagine energy, and that's going to take equity. So I think that women are going to play a big role. The first energy system that we are a part of, what I call kind of Energy 1.0, was built by the Bubbas and the Wildcatters and the risk takers. Many of you are risk takers if you're in an entrepreneurial situation. But way back then, women were in the home, right? People of color didn't have a huge, voice. They didn't have a voice at all, okay? So we're living in a different time. So I call it Energy 2.0, which is the beginning of what something, new and great will be in the next 30 to 50 years for us and for our children and our grandchildren. And women absolutely, and particularly people of color, women of color, need to be a part of this energy system.
Great. I'm glad you transitioned a little bit to talking about entrepreneurs, and being an entrepreneur can be really difficult. You're an entrepreneur, and what are some of those struggles that you've had to overcome, and how do you ensure that you live that entrepreneurial spirit that's driving you?
Well, I will first say this: social media is rotten, because I think we see when we look at our feeds, or we look on LinkedIn, or we look on whatever your app is. We see success, but every entrepreneur knows that you have to be a freaking failure, and you have to fail not only fast, but you've got to fail hard in order to learn, pivot, adapt, right, and move to the next iteration. When you build something from the ground up, it is a lot of work. It's exhausting. It's frustrating. It's disappointing at times. We don't have the resources we need, right? Capitalism is hard. However, there's something beautiful about entrepreneurship. It's called ownership. You get to own something. You get to build something. And I think the biggest lessons I've learned along the way in my entrepreneurial journey is I go back to, why am I doing this? Because if you have a solid why, if you know what gets you out of bed every day, then you're going to be successful. If you don't have a why, or you don't feel it anymore, it's probably not something you should be doing.
What are some ways that we can best prepare ourselves to build our entrepreneurial spirit and thrive, whether we're a single business owner or we're within an organization? Like, I'm in a big organization now, but entrepreneurs live in every organization. How do we really prepare ourselves to be entrepreneurs and thrive in these times and in these changing times?
Well, I'm a big believer that entrepreneurship, and what they call entrepreneurship for corporates, because honestly, I look back on my corporate life and I was just a closet entrepreneur. I was in denial. I always wanted to be the person who is helping to bring about change. I think it's a core skill that we need to be teaching our kids, right? We don't live in a static world anymore. And I think that the way we prepare ourselves is to realize, 7 years ago, I did a speech and I just saw a picture in my memories, file. And it said, the background, chaos is the new standard, right? We got to get over the fact that things they're ever changing, and we have to be able to master, the ability to pivot and be that continuous learner. So I think to prepare yourself, you got to be curious. You should not be, don't beat up on yourself. And you've absolutely got to remember that this skill set is necessary to thrive in a world, where we've got constant change. Now, I will say these things, ladies and gents, and as soon as I'm stuck, right, you'll remind me, because we're all humans. We all give ourselves a hard time. Our muscles for creativity and curiosity need nurturing, so they need sleep. That's another way that I can tell you as entrepreneurs that you do need to, to rest up and get your sleep. But those are some of the things that kind of come to mind for me when it comes to preparing for entrepreneurship and making sure that we're developing that entrepreneurship within companies so that we can move our businesses forward.
Thanks. I love you talking about curiosity and continuous learning. And I'll tell you the thing about sleep, like my brain hasn't been this tired in a long time in these last 2 weeks. Like I'm going to bed at like 9:30 and I'm usually up way later than that. And so getting that rest and helping yourself recharge is super important. Let's transition a little bit to the energy workforce of the future, because I know you spend a lot of time in that space. And I understand this is what Ally is all about. Can you tell us about Ally and what you see, what you foresee coming in the industry?
Well, first of all, we talked a little bit about it earlier. While there is a lack of access to energy, there is an increase on demand, and unfortunately, we're seeing a continuous increase on carbon emissions. And energy has never been a sought after career, whether it was oil and gas or renewables, or people want to go and work for Amazon. They want to work for tech. They want to work for things they can put their hands on. But we make the world run. And so one of the things we did a couple of years ago, after I started working with oil and gas firms, I was getting calls like, really like this pink petro, but the pink and the petro, and I said, you know what? Case in point, I understand. So we got together and amassed as many folks as we could across the energy value chain, in small organizations and large organizations and associations and schools. And we brought everybody together and we said, okay, what to make do about the energy workforce of the future. This is going to be critical because our federal government is constantly saying we don't have enough talent. And let's face it, that is a national security item, right? We've got to have qualified, capable people to run our energy in an efficient way. So we sat down and we said, what can we do together? And what we did was we came up with 4 things. The first is, everyone said, no doubt, we need a diverse and inclusive, a just workforce. So everybody said, okay, what does that look like? Well, that's about culture change. Culture change is about having conversations, right, over and over and over, shaping new beliefs, helping people to, adapt, and obviously giving organizations exposure to training and engagement. The second was, we got to measure this. Okay, so if we say we want this, we got to measure this as an industry. So I said, okay, this will be fun, because we all like our metrics, but everybody has their own survey, right? So the next thing we did is we said, we're going to come up, with an index, right? We're going to push out something where people can give their perspectives, right, on how we're doing with that. The third thing we said was, boy, we need an industry value proposition pretty quickly. Children do not want to get into energy. They're, I think, interested in climate, right? We see that they're on the streets marching, but we really need them in our labs, helping us put that human energy into solutions. So we said we needed that, and we needed literacy. So that's where I said, okay, well, we obviously need a job site. We need possible pathways. We need stories and role models. We need to humanize energy. Okay, we need to take the matter that nobody really sees except when things blow up, and we need to make it relatable, personable, engaging. And then the fourth thing we said is, we need to accelerate best practices, which means we need to stop being in our little silos. I'm in oil and gas, and you're in utilities, and you're in solar. I think the challenge in this country right now is that the politicians on both sides are making this way too political. Sure, there's going to be an economic impact. You guys, I don't have to tell you that. You're in Oklahoma, an oil and gas state. But at the end of the day, we've got to invest in our future. We have to be thinking about what it's going to take to do this. Not too long ago, I got a chance to hear Warren Buffett on a call for a program that I did with as an entrepreneur called the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Program. I just want to throw it out there. Great program that I went through. And he said, on the other side of this pandemic is going to be an insane tailwind, because in this country, in this world, we're going to see transformation. And this is not different than what we saw years ago after the plague. Of course, we weren't around, but we read about it. So we need to make some decisions about how we're going to go about and do this. And given that the energy industry is the basis for our economy, it makes a lot of sense for us to come together as an industry, as a private industry, to do our part, right, in thinking about how we keep talent, how we rotate talent. So how do we take an oil and gas person and make them ready for a clean energy job? How do we make sure that we, continue to develop talent that's in, oil and gas? How do you take displaced coal workers, right, and move them around? So there's been a lot of discussion actually amongst private industry that people don't hear about, that says we've got some great people here. Let's make sure we keep them warm. Let's make sure we keep them engaged. And let's keep them from going and, working at Facebook or Amazon. So that's what the energy workforce of the future is about. And kind of within those 4 areas at Ally, we have different programs, different initiatives, different things that companies can do to get engaged. And we also have a way for entrepreneurs to get engaged as well. So
that is really exciting. And it's a great transition to my next question. Do you see or do you believe that women have particular strengths when it comes to this issue and what we bring to the table? And if so, what are they and how do we best utilize them?
Yeah, so, I think one of the natural strengths that I see in women is we're great collaborators. We are able to see things from different perspectives. Oftentimes, if you look back, and I'm sorry, I kind of trump all over the the political spectrum, and I, by the way, I use the word Trump in no way to indicate my affiliation, but the women in Congress are the ones, right, getting the deals done behind the scenes. It's the women shoring up people and encouraging, right, people to come to the table and build bridges. If we do not take action soon on our environment and on energy for the long term, we are going to continue to see the eradication of wealth, more poverty. We're going to see, changes in our financial system, and we're going to see potentially changes, in the value of our real estate. I lost my house in Harvey and my business not too far away, and it was a big wake-up call that, hey, you know what? I think more women, and obviously bringing the guys along, but more women at this table, trying to get people to work together instead of, being divided, is our true skill set and our true north.
That's it. You're painting a picture of a really exciting future. You are an ambassador to the U.S. Department of Energy on the Equity and Energy Initiative. Tell us a little bit more about that, and what is the impact that you hope it will have on women and our country and on policy?
Great question. So I get this call about a year ago. President Trump wanted to enable the Department of Energy to select private citizens and private business, the private industry or industry, not government, people from all walks of life, all forms of energy, all backgrounds, to form this initiative. It's been norming and storming and forming for years. So it's actually been something that has kind of, passed hands, right, past different administrations, which was really appealing to me. I mean, I told these guys, I said, so if the outcome of the election changes, like, is this going to change? Because I'm not into that. I'm into the mission. And so what they said was, this was, something that the whole country is rallying around. We have a challenge with talent. We need to attract the best talent, train the best talent here to make things here, right? To do the things that actually I watched my parents' generation go through. I'm a Gen Xer, and a lot of technology, a lot of exporting, right, of manufacturing. I saw all of that. So we need to kind of return to that and start focusing, on home, but also celebrating the diversity and the equity that we have in this country and getting more people engaged, right, in that. And so that's what the promise of it is. It has different pillars. You can check it out on the website. What I hope to see for women is more accessibility for small businesses. Small businesses play a role in this. More accessibility for women that may not, that may be outside of obviously energy, that want to get into the energy industry. For veterans, folks who have served our country, for various folks from different ethnicities. That was the goal for the country. What I really I want to see now that we have a different administration too, is we're not going to leave our brothers behind that built the infrastructure that we live on today. And so if we're truly going to have a just transition, this means all people in all forms matter, but we've got to find a balance of what makes sense, right? Not waste. And we've got to see the spirit of, the country around democracy and innovation and, the American dream, right? Use this as a way to get people excited about the future, given that we've had a really, really tough 14 months.
Yep, that is. Yeah, that forward-looking component is super, super important for all of us. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and continue along your entrepreneurial path. You founded a nonprofit called Lean In Energy that is affiliated with the National Lean In organization founded by Sheryl Sandberg. Why did you found this organization, and did you hope to achieve? What do you hope to achieve, and how can people participate?
So this is a special project for me, and I get sometimes a little vulnerable, so I'll apologize up front. When I started my business way back when, I read Sheryl's book, Lean In, and I thought it was good, and I thought some of it was not applicable because, let's face it, Sheryl is Sheryl. She's a billionaire, and we all don't live billionaire lives, and she's okay with that criticism. But she got the conversation started, and one of the questions in her book was, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And this is what guides me every day, that and my why. It's like, what's my why? And like, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And I had a chance to meet Sheryl. It was amazing. Got to meet with her and several other Lean In leaders who had mentoring circles several years back. And a month later, we lost our house. And it's probably been the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with. And I wrote about it in my book because, as you all know, we're taught to work hard. And I woke up and realized that we are all truly vulnerable. And there are more vulnerable people out there, right, than us. Many people out there who struggle just to eat, right, or to get inside because it's warm or because it's cold. And so her foundation helped us when we needed it. And she taught me, and her organization taught me, that it's okay to ask for help. Because I wasn't taught to ask for help. I was taught to give help. And that's hard, right? When you're in the seat where you need to receive. And so it was an honor that they would do that for our family. And she called me and she said, it was in the depths of just complete, oh my God, I have to rebuild a house, and we were not insured. We did not have flood insurance. The federal government ordered dams to be released forcefully into the neighborhood. So we weren't sure what to do. And I remember when she called me and she said, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And I said, I would keep going with my business because the business was thriving. But it was an easy time, ladies, for me to paint the picture of the hurricane swept her away. Like, I could have really given up then, right? You're rebuilding a house, you're rebuilding a business, you're trying to keep up, right? It was a lot to have to deal with. And so I feel so honored that I had that circle of sisterhood around me and brotherhood, because there are a few men that are in Lean In, to say, like, we're here to lift you up. Hopefully this will help you get going so you can focus on the work that you're doing, because what you're doing really matters. So if I look back on that, if I had stopped, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So we launched Lean In Energy, a nonprofit, which is crazy. I launched it as I was building a home, rebuilding the home, and running a crazy startup. And people say, how did you do that? It was sheer energy. It gave me hope, and it got me through some very dark days. And so I love every aspect of it, and it's a great organization, and Lean In has done a lot for women across the world. And I think it's even something that has, even made Cheryl realize, wow, I wrote a book and it became a movement. So.
Well, that's exciting. I'm glad that you had that circle around you, or, we wouldn't be here today, right?
But I got to tell you, it is very humbling, because when you lose things, and even for a split second, you don't have a car, you don't have all I had when I got out of the boat getting rescued and my kid is screaming was her clinging to me and a phone and the clothes that I had. And I seriously thought for moments, like, this is what it feels like to not have anything. Not trying to say that I'm comparing myself to anyone, right, who lives that reality every day, but it was a very, humbling moment. My child remembers it. So when we see homeless people, she is inspired, right, to give. And that's why it's gotten me thinking a lot about, our environment. We need to do something about it. We need it. We love it. Ladies, the oil and gas industry, the utilities industry has been wonderful to my household, right? But it's also harming things. So how can we make this better and more equitable for everyone? And that's the mission, that we try to bring through at Ally. And the whole name Ally is because my daughter's name is Ali. And she taught me that, it's about being a force for good. So we've got to come together. We've got to become allies. We have to unite, despite how we see things, despite policy, despite politics, and really rally, to drive a better energy future forward. So.
Yeah. There was something you mentioned when we were prepping for our interview today, that part of Ally is all, right? The first three letters are all. And so I know that's something that I'm going to take away with me. I'm glad you mentioned the book for a minute. So you did write a book that was published last year, Grow with the Flow, Embrace Differences, Overcome Fear, Progress with Purpose. Particularly this year, and what the country and the world have gone through over the last 14 months in this time of the coronavirus, COVID-19. What are some of the concepts that you share in your book, and that you feel are particularly meaningful right now and that we can carry forward?
Well, there's a chapter in the book called I'm Not Ready. I'll pick on Obama. Obama wasn't ready to be the first African-American president of the United States. He's the first person to say that. We're never ready. But sometimes life just gets us ready. And the whole notion of grow with the flow is there are going to be currents. There are going to be, you're either in the boat, either trying to row or maybe you're outside because you're caught in the rapid and you're trying to get out, or breathe and get back into the boat. You sure better not be on the sideline, because there's something called YOLO right now. Or no, YOLO. You only live once. I think the last year brought serious pause to our nation and our world because of the people we lost to the coronavirus. I think in so many ways it slowed many of us down to the point of exhaustion, because many of us like to be busy bees. And it made us really think about, what does it mean to be alive? I saw maybe 7 that I know that we lost, and not everybody due to corona, but some who slipped into depression and chose to, end their own lives. And I think that it's important that as we come out of this pandemic, we decide, what are we going to do with our lives? when I was at BP, I had this moment because I was talking about it last night with my client. I could have stayed and they offered me more money to stay and all that. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And I said, I'd go home and I would take this nice severance or whatever, because I had an option to stay or to leave. And anyway, I left. And it was so great because I left just in time before oil crashed. And I started this crazy thing that has become a business. And I'm asking myself that question now. I mean, look, life's too short. You only live once. So I asked myself that last night, what do you do? What'd you do if you weren't afraid? And I'd say, I'm going to go raise that money I need in order to make the change happen, right? I mean, this all happens for a reason. Things in our lives, I think, do. And so I think it's important that we think about that, in mind. And that's what I would leave you with, when it comes to the book and everything. The book was a lot of fun. It only took me 20 years to finish it. So I had written lots of it, which is funny. But, it was not until Hurricane Harvey when I absolutely had profound loss. And the other thing that's so interesting, and I share this sentiment with Cheryl. So she lost her husband, he passed away. People came out and said, but you're rich. But she doesn't have her husband, the person that loves her and that she has children with, right? People said this to me when I lost, when we lost everything. They were like, but you didn't lose anybody. You lost your house. It's just stuff. I'm sorry. It's the stuff I chose to make a life right around. And so I had to get over that. You know what I mean? And so loss is relative. It's, it's relative, but it was the first time I was able to really, truly get my head around. Sure, I've had people pass away in my life, but when I felt that extreme sorrow of what it felt like to have nothing for moments, that was a defining moment in my life. And I felt like, okay, it's time to finish the book. And it helped me kind of get through therapy. So I didn't write it for anyone. I wrote it to kind of get it all out. And then the funny thing is, a publisher calls me, hey, it's about to go on press. And I'm like, great, the 15 gigs that I tried to set up to do, our tour. And I went, okay. So all the books came to my house. They're in the man cave. But what was nice about it is there are chapters in the book that were very applicable for the time that we have been living. And I think it's relevant also for the future. So.
Mm-hmm. That's a great segue. We've got our first question in the Q&A. So just remember, if you've got a question, please drop it in the Q&A, not in the chat. We've got a couple things to look at. So if you can drop it in the Q&A, that'd be great. This question from Jane. Katie, where do you see yourself in 5 years, in 10 years? What's next?
This is where I get to tell you, Katie, where would you be in 5 or 10 years? What would you do if you weren't afraid? My answer would be, I'm running a successful private company that is venture backed, that might go public or might stay private, that is helping to enable a better world around energy. And in 10 years, I would say, and I have no problem saying this, I hope I'm sitting on a beach, drinking whatever I want, and that I can look back on what I've done and feel like I did the things that made me most afraid.
That's a pretty interesting and fantastic future. I'll join you on that beach. I think that's a great, Donna made a note, and I think it's a really great transition. You've had some peaks and some valleys, and then, some steady stuff in the middle too. Talk a little bit about resilience, because, coming off of peaks and valleys, how do you keep moving forward?
I think we live in a very noisy world. I mean, even like last night, I did the dumb thing of looking at Twitter, and there was a nasty post aimed at me. And I said to myself, I used to look at those things and I'd cry, I'd get in the corner and I'd ball up, and then I thought to myself, if we can just isolate ourselves and kind of put ourselves in a bit of a box and say, what are the things that I can, how can I have an impact? Because there's a lot of impact around us and a lot of, stuff that's out of control. So a lot of times I have to say to myself, okay, like, A, that doesn't matter. B, what energy do I want to put into the world? And part of that also means taking really good care of yourself. And I've not been particularly good at this throughout the journey. Other times I've been better. But if you put your own mask on first, you'll find that you'll have, the energy. Sometimes ladies, I would get and I do these power nights where I just work until 2:00 in the morning, right? And when I was younger, I could, I don't know, pull it off. Now I think that it's less about that. It's more about, okay, get to bed and get some sleep, because in the morning you're going to feel, better. So I think it gets back to tune out the freaking noise, because there's a lot of it, and create your own energy, what energy you want to put in the world, and then take care of yourself, get some freaking sleep.
I think that's great advice for all of us, to get some sleep, and definitely makes you a better problem solver. So we've got a diverse group of professions represented in the group here, and your focus is on energy. Regardless of where we sit inside the sector or outside the sector, what are some things we can do to impact the energy industry?
So the first thing that I would recommend anyone do is know your number. Now, we say that, and people say that usually means getting on a scale. I would recommend that you know that number, because that's a very good number to know, because it indicates possible, right, or it's partially an indicator of health. But I would know your carbon emissions. I woke up a couple of years ago after watching Jeff Bridges has this amazing flick. It's his first flick, and it's not industry. It's called Living in the Future's Past, Netflix. It's beautiful, and it kind of explains how we got to where we are as humans. It gets into like human behavior and human psyche and anthropology. And he brings all these really smart people from across all over the place to talk about it. I walked out of that movie and I said, I'm going to go calculate my footprint. When you know your numbers, you can make an impact. Now, everyone says, yeah, but it's not going to matter my impact. Absolutely it is, because behavioral shift is important. So in 18 months, I've cut it in half. Now I've invested in, in some energy efficiency. I drive an electric car. I'm thoughtful about what I eat, what I consume. But I never would have thought to do that. So I put that out there. Like, you can be a consumer, you can be in the industry, but they have carbon calculators. So give you a perspective, ladies. 2 trips, which I easily did a month to Europe, equaled 1 total kilowatt hour or total kilowatts for my entire family's consumption of electricity at home. I was like, wow. So if you think about transportation, it's massive for us, right? It's massive. It's also the reason why the airlines are suffering. It's also the reason why, obviously, the oil and gas companies have suffered, because the lack of use of fuels. But what if we could take transport, right, and transform it, and lower it? So I say know your numbers. And then the second thing I would say is, excuse me, is be curious. You read a headline, read further, then go read the facts. Get really educated about energy. We had a big freeze here in February, and it was crazy. It was, the only reason we even got, believe it or not, that we were able to sleep is because we went in the car, and the car has this neat little butt warmer, right? So, we could turn the climate on in the car, and it was fully charged, and we had a backup. So don't assume when you read what somebody says, windmills are terrible and all that, or natural gas is terrible, or all that. Like, I think consumers really need to get their head around energy. I just do, we're wasting, we're very wasteful. I see somebody here saying, grass finished beef improves carbon footprint. You better believe it. Regenerative agriculture. There's another guy I had a crush on in high school. We were pals, and now he's like this big, movie director. It's called Kiss the Ground. You watch Kiss the Ground. It's an amazing flick about like how farmers are regenerating the soil. So nature, right, is doing its part, but the farmers have to stop the old practices, right, that drove us to the problem. So that's my other advice is just get really educated. Go watch movies, go watch, documentaries, go to places that you may not think you would, get some, sound information, and never let the headline be what educates you.
Yeah. We're going to switch gears a little bit. We've got some questions in the Q&A, a couple on working in the energy industry. So one from Sue is, what is the best way to enter the energy industry with a background in management and HR?
Well, this is a shameless plug. I would go to allienergy.com and get involved. What you see today is getting ready to change. We are in the middle of a strategic acquisition. So ladies, what would you do if you weren't afraid? You'd buy another company while you're trying to raise money. Sorry, I laugh because I look back at my life and I'm like, would definitely not do that. But I recommend that because we're accelerating our business, and we want to help get more women, into the industry. I will say that there are a lot of HR professionals, there. And obviously someone like, Christi, who came from Sonic, found her way right into utilities. It's possible. Functional roles are generally very much appreciated. And I do see the energy industry hiring from the outside to bring more diversity to its business. So,
okay. Along those, a similar line, different take.
Mm-hmm.
How can the industry, what adaptations does the industry need to take to retain female talent? This is from Julie. Avoid mid-career flight and increase gender diversity in leadership.
So it's going to sound weird, but I'm going to first say, make sure that we're treating the men equally. And what I mean by that is give them benefits, and not just give them benefits, but allow them to take off for the birth of their children. Allow them to be the other spouse. When we raise men, we raise women. When it comes to this stereotypical thing around going back to work, my husband was working for GE when we had our little one, and I remember it was like, I'm gonna go back to work. And then, now GE was one of the big, progressive companies that stepped forward to do that. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing I would say is men need to actively sponsor women, promote them, give them chances, right? I'm doing this myself right now. I'm getting ready to hire a COO, and I'm very excited because, I'm bringing on somebody who I might not would have thought of to approach. So we have to challenge our biases, right, around how we're going to hire and how we're going to promote, because guys get the chances and women stay, sit there eager, right, because they want to make a difference. And for women that are frustrated, I would tell you, what, ask. What would you do if you weren't afraid? Ask. If you don't ask, you don't get. I learned that when I was pregnant. And if you ask and you don't like the answer, then get up off your duff and find the answer you want, which is yes. There are plenty of companies out there that want talented women.
Great. We've got our last two questions. I'm trying to watch time too, and they're both from Suzanne. Where do you see gas prices headed, and do we have options to lower these costs?
So I love it when I get that question, because I get to say, I am not a market person. However, I will say this, if you look at the fundamentals and you think about where we've been in a high supply situation for a really long time. So here's the thing, what I love about the US, we innovated and pioneered fracking, and it totally flooded the market with gas. Great. By the way, we can innovate and do the same with clean energy. So where are prices going to go? I think that when we start consuming again, we're going to see, I think the oil companies will recover and do well. But I do think we're going to continue to see ongoing volatility. I just think this is the way our world is today. We're going to see the spikes and whatnot. Countries are not cooperating as much. How can we lower costs? Well, we can lower costs as consumers and look at efficiency in our homes. You can also look at if you have wind generation, perhaps making that choice, because that lowers cost as well as it lowers emissions. So a lot of that gets back to what I said earlier about energy literacy. Be aware, research, right, and figure out ways that we can be more efficient and cost, or look at our costs differently. So
okay, and then one more question from the group. Are you aware of the new well cert for buildings, and are you involved?
I am not aware, but well cert sounds awesome. It says,
so we'll all go find out about that. Or
I know, right?
Suzanne, if you want to drop a link in the
Yeah,
chat,
do that.
folks can take a look at it. I have one more question for you, Katie. Given everything we've talked about today, what are the top 3 actions you would like our audience to take as we wrap up today's call?
So the first thing I want to tell you is be yourselves. You can't Photoshop. Hang on. Be yourselves. You can't Photoshop personality. You just can't. So be you. Stop worrying about being something else. And if you can't figure out who you are, then let's go figure that out, right? That's number 1. Number 2 is be so freaking curious and hungry for information, and feast at the banquet of knowledge. Make sure that knowledge is coming from different places and different perspectives. And third, you should always ask yourself, what's my why? And what would you do if you weren't afraid?
That sounds great. And with that, Donna, I'm going to kick it over to you. I know you've got a few minutes to close us out and bring it home.
You guys did a tremendous job. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here. This has been a terrific session. And guys, we're going to have the video up later today. Please share it with your friends. Let people know the link because I think this is really useful information. So thanks again. And we really appreciate OG&E as well. Thank you for sponsoring the program. I just wanted to let you guys know what's coming. On May 7th, we're going to have Stacy Eads. She's a technology CEO who's been recognized with several awards for being a critical leader who's going to talk about scaling your business. On May 14th, we have Tracy Chadwell with 1843 Capital, and she's been named as one of Entrepreneur Magazine's 100 Powerful Women and Forbes 8 Women VCs to Know. On May 28th, we'll have a networking session, which we do the 4th Friday of every month, where everybody is live and you get a chance to connect with each other. And we really are trying to create a community here where we all support one another. On June 11th, we'll have Mick Cornett, the former mayor of Oklahoma City, and I think he was the head of the Mayor's Council across the U.S. Before I close it out, is there anything else, Christy or Katie, you guys want to add?
I think I'm great. Thanks for having me. I think you guys helped propel me on my learning curve in my week 2 at OG&E. Very excited. And thanks for having us today, Katie, and thanks so much.
Yeah, and thank you, Christy. And the only thing I want to say is, Donna, you're amazing.
Yeah.
Bringing this community together and helping entrepreneurs, this is what it's all about. And it is definitely about purse power.
Absolutely. You bet. We're in total alignment on that one. Okay. So I just want to let everybody know that if you don't have a directory listing on our Purse Power directory, please get one. We've got 750,000 women-owned and women-led businesses across the U.S. And if your company has a female CEO or president, or it's half owned by women, or you have at least 20% women on the board, we want you in our directory. So please go to our website, pursepower.com. We also just created a new way for you guys to assess your presence in cyberspace. I recognize that one of the issues we all have is how on earth do we get out there and cut through all the noise and have people understand who we are and what we do, and particularly about our businesses. So if you go to our website, pursepower.com, and say, see how my business is performing online, you can get a free report, a snapshot that will show you exactly how you're showing up based on the way Google sees you. Please download our Google Chrome extension from pursepower.com. And you'll be able to find and buy from women-owned and women-led businesses as you shop online on Google. A Purse Power logo will appear next to the businesses. We'd appreciate it if you'd use your women-owned, women-led directory to buy from women. That we've got all the power in the world if we will just support the companies that support us, and like and share our social media pages. I'd also really appreciate it if you would let people know about this broadcast. Again, we bring in some national leaders, like the two you saw this morning, that have some terrific information to share, and we are trying to support our community of women-owned and women-led businesses. Last thing I'd like to tell you, thank you again for being here, and please remember, Purse Power, we have it, let's use it. Thank you so much. Have a great week, and I hope you join us next Friday.